Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Addie. Today we are going to be doing my March wrap-up, and I'm going to tell you all the books that I read in March. And I had a really good reading month. A little summary of the month. I read 7 books, 1 short story, and 1 novella. I think what this month really did for me was it showed me I am really deep in my fantasy phase right now, because I didn't read, like I read a few fantasies, but I did not read a lot. And I read a lot of books, but I wasn't really blown away by a lot of them. And I feel like all I really wanted to do was read was fantasy, and or like kind of more whimsy kind of stuff. If you watch my April TBR, there's tons of fantasy on that list, and I think that's just what I'm in the mood for. But anyway, I did read some really good books though this month, so let's talk about them. My first read of the month was Hopeless by Elsie Silver. And I know I said I'm into fantasy right now, but this was my one exception that I absolutely loved, and it is the 5th and final installment of the Chestnut Springs series, and I love this series so much. Like, something about a good cowboy romance really does it for me. I rated this 5 stars, like hands down. It's just like a 5-star series to me. Like, you're not gonna get like a literary masterpiece out of these, but you're gonna get a really fun time. And this book followed Beau and Bailey, and Beau is like the final brother of the series, and he was the brother I was like really excited for and waiting for. And I feel like it was definitely worth the hype. Like, I saw people like kind of had their issues with it, and I definitely see why this was not my favorite in the entire Chestnut Springs series, but I flew through this book so fast. And Beau has just come back from war. He was lost at war for a while, and he comes back very different, and from like the happy like go lucky guy that he usually is. He's you know, dealing with his PTSD. And Bailey is wrong side of the tracks. Like, her brothers are literally just menaces, and she is not, and she's like, but she's like attached to the name. And so she has trouble getting a job, and like, so she works at this bar, and they kind of strike a deal where she's like, you know, like, if I had the last name Eaton, I can get away with anything too. And he's like, you know, that's not true. So they basically like come up with like a bet where they get together and they are like fake engaged to see if like her name going to be Eaton changes how people in the town perceive her. And I just thought it was really fun. Who doesn't love like a fake engagement? And I just thought that it really dealt with grief and PTSD and like all that really well. And I also really liked how I feel like Bailey, the way she was written, was like really good for Beau, because I feel like he kind of needed someone like her to bring like a little bit of fun back into his life, but also like be like, okay, you gotta get your shit together at some point. And like, no one else was gonna say that to him, and like, but she just kind of said what needed to be said, and I feel like he wouldn't have been able to heal without her. And all in all, I just thought this was a really amazing story, and I'm really excited for her next book, Wild Love, that comes out this month, because I just love Elsie Silver with my whole heart. So I definitely recommend the Chestnut Springs series. It is like a 5-star read for me. And then the next book I read was Butcher and Blackbird by Bren Weaver. Guys, this book was the strangest reading experience I've ever had in my life. I've never been more viscerally uncomfortable in my life. I did rate it 3 stars because I did like it. Like, some parts were like really fun, and some parts were like really disturbing. This book is a romance, but like a serial killer romance, where both of the main characters are serial killers, but they're serial killers who kill other serial killers. And I thought that was a really interesting concept. So it's kind of like a dark romance in a way. It deals with some really dark topics. In the beginning, there are a list of trigger warnings, and do not just skim over those. Please read them. Please, because they're not lying. There's some pretty detailed stuff in there. What really got me was the accidental cannibalism. That's what really got me. And there are some parts in here that are super gory that I didn't particularly care for, because I just don't think I was expecting it in a romance. Like, I just don't know what this book was trying to be, because it was so many different things at once, and I was just kind of confused at some points. It was a really fast read, and it was like fun. That definitely go in with caution, but you will be entertained. I did enjoy it while I was reading it, but sometimes I'd like put it down and like reflect on it and be like, what am I doing with my free time? Like, what am I doing right now? Yeah, that's kind of all there is to say about it. It was interesting. It's the best way to describe it, but solid 3 stars, because I kind of just averaged it, because some parts were like 2 stars and some parts were, say, like were like 4, so I just like put together. And then the next book was exactly what I needed after that. Just so good. And it is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies by Heather Fawcett. I love this book so much. This was my favorite book I read of the month, for sure. Not even competition. And I just loved it. I think it was so perfect first after Butcher and Blackbird. It's very chill, it's very whimsical, it's very like innocent, I would say, which is what I needed. And it's a cozy fantasy, and it basically is literally just this woman, Emily Wilde, who is a professor at Cambridge, and she studies fairies, and she is forming an encyclopedia of fairies where just like she wants to create like this reference point of like anyone can go to see any type of fairy. And she's at her last stop to study this one type, and it's basically, it reads like an academic journal, which is not for everyone, but I particularly very much enjoyed that. It's very character driven, like not a lot happens. There are some, like, what I did like is that there are parts where like things do happen, so it's not just like reading about specific types of fairies the entire time. And she goes to this like little small town in England, and like it's like a little village to study, because that's where the fairies usually are. They're not like usually in big cities. And I really liked that because all like the little townspeople were so funny, and Emily Wilde is just so, and like, you know, like small town people, like they're always like very like togetherness, like, you know, very community based, and she is just not like that. She wants nothing to do with people. She just wants to be alone with her books, and that was just so relatable to me, and I loved that for her. And she's just so like cranky and like she's just really funny, and I just really enjoyed this one because that's literally what it is. It's literally just her going to study fairies. And Wendell is so funny in this. Wendell is her co-worker, who is very eccentric, and they don't get along very well. Well, she just doesn't really like him, but he insists on coming along, and he kind of just shows up, and he just like frustrates her, and like he just like annoys her the entire time. And I just think that was really funny because he just gets up to these little shenanigans, and like he's very charismatic, and the townspeople like loved him, and she was like, and they like don't really like her because she's very much like introverted, and she's like, can you actually just leave me alone? And I thought that was really funny. But I just love this book so much, and I'm reading Map of the Otherlands right now. I don't even know if it's possible, but I think I might be liking it even more, and I don't know, it's so good. So I will have a reading vlog of that next week, of reading Map of the Otherlands, so like I'll have more thoughts on that. So if you want to know more thoughts, go watch that. And I just love this book. I love this book so much. But then it went really downhill from there, because I decided to read Redeeming Six by Chloe Walsh. And I want to say, like, I love the Boys of Tommen series. Like, as a whole, I love it. I just didn't like this one because I don't really like Joey and Effa, which are the 2 main characters of this, because Binding and Keeping 13 are Johnny and Shannon, who I love. But this one, okay, it follows Joey, Shannon's brother, and it kind of follows the same timeline as Binding and Keeping 13, which I found got a little repetitive. Like, I felt like I kind of already read it in a way. They're so, like, this did not need to be this long. Binding and Keeping 13 were the same length, and I did not feel that way with that. I think my problem was I just didn't really like Joey and Effa, and this almost put me in like a drastic reading slump because it took me 2 weeks to read. And I honestly didn't really want to read it because I knew I didn't like Joey and Effa from, or mostly Effa, from Saving Sex. But I needed to read this for Taming 7, which comes out this month, and I love Claire and Gibbsy, so I was like, I need to read this. And I have a lot of thoughts on this. It's in my 24-hour readathon, so I won't go too deep into it. I rated this 2 stars, which really pained me to do. I love this series, and like I love the characters, but like just not these characters. And like I just didn't really like the trope. I didn't like where Joey's story went, and like I felt like also Effa was not the same Effa in Binding and Keeping 13 as she was in this book. Like she was kind of insufferable in this one. Like she was cool and like kind of a badass in the first two, but like in this one I'm like, who are you? I feel like she downplayed everyone's trauma when comparing it to Joey. Like I get it, like that's your man, like that's who you care about the most, but like you have to care about his family too. Like any chance she got to make it about herself, she did. And I know, like I am so defensive of any female characters. Like I am the first to defend, like, because I feel like in romance books the female character gets overhated so much, like always. So I'm always like the first to be like, no, like maybe it's just a little misogyny that we don't like her. But this one, she was just insufferable. I'm sorry, like I just could not stand her. But I'm excited for Taming 7, but I don't want to be too negative. And I did rate it 2 stars because I do think there were like some cute moments in this book that I did enjoy that like kept it from being a 1 star. But all in all, this one was just, this storyline just wasn't for me at the end of the day. It just was not my cup of tea. And I definitely think it's a series worth reading. I just don't think this one was particularly my style. And then I needed something really, really like quick, because this book took me 2 weeks and I was like, I just need something fast. So I read Final Girls by Riley Sager, and this was just what I needed, to be honest. It wasn't the best thriller I've ever read in my life, no, but it was a good time and I enjoyed it. So this was, I love Riley Sager. I rave about him all the time. I loved The Only One Left. That's one of my favorite thrillers of all time. But this was not my favorite. It's probably my least favorite of his, but I still love him as an author very much. So it was still good. I rated it 3 stars. I would totally recommend it as like just a fun, fast read. It just didn't really stick with me. It's about this girl Quincy who 10 years ago she went on this college vacation, and they went to this little cottage. She was the only one who came back alive, and then the media kind of turned her into what they call a final girl, which is like a girl who's been involved in like kind of like a mass in like a massacre kind of thing, and they're the only one who survived. And there's 2 others. There's Sam and Lisa. It's 10 years later and Quincy's been doing really good, but all of a sudden she gets notified that Lisa has committed suicide. It just seems a little suspicious. Lisa was just always very much like very positive, very trying to like move on kind of thing. But then Sam, the other final girl, shows up at Quincy's door and she's like, hey, like we should just check in on each other, you know, like we should be more involved in each other's lives, because like, you know, like we're the only ones who know what we've gone through. It just starts to get weird. Sam's presence there starts bringing up what really happened at that cottage 10 years ago, and Quincy's trying to navigate like what Sam's telling the truth or whether she's lying, and how this all connects to Pine Cottage 10 years ago. I would say the first like 50% was pretty slow going. I was like, I don't think I'm vibing with this, but then it really picked up, and like you get that classic Riley Sager like thriller on the edge of my seat feeling. And so I think the last 50% is what saved it for me. I really enjoyed reading that, and all in all I thought it was a solid thriller. I really enjoyed it and I would recommend it. It's just a fun read. It reads super fast and super easy, and I liked it. And then the next book I read was, it was the short story. It connected to like the Cosmere, Brandon Sanderson world. It was like literally 25 pages. It was The Hope for Elantris. Honestly, I love how Brandon Sanderson can make like 25 pages like feel pretty fleshed out, and like I don't think it didn't need to be longer than 25 pages. And it just, I feel like it just added to Elantris. Basically the Hope of Elantris is another character's point of view during like the climax of the novel Elantris that like you didn't get to see during that book, and I just thought it added on. It was a nice little addition and a little bit more holistic understanding of the Elantris world, and I really enjoyed it actually. And so I rated it 3 stars, and honestly I just rated it 3 stars because I feel like it's impossible to get more than that for like 25 pages, because it's just a little short story. It just added on. You definitely don't need to read it, but I enjoyed it I'm glad that I read it because I am really trying to like read the entirety of the Cosmere. So if I'm gonna do this, I want to do it right. I'm glad I read it. It was a good time. I really do like Elantris, so I liked kind of being back with those characters just for a little bit. But there's not really that much to say about it. Then the next book I read was Renegades by Marissa Meyer, and Renegades was interesting. I did like the book. The more I think about it, the less I liked it, if that makes sense. I had fun while reading it, but the more I think about it, the less I kind of want to read the second one, which I already bought. I'm gonna read it and see how the series, because I kind of want to know how the series progresses, but like I just don't want to right now. It's superheroes. It's like a YA sci-fi, and it's about this girl Nova who lives in this world where the renegades kind of rule the world, and the renegades are these prodigies they're superheroes basically. People who are born with supernatural abilities. They're kind of held to this high standard in society, like people adore them, but Nova hates them. She wants revenge against the renegades, and she's aligned with the villain group who the renegades hate, the anarchists. But then Nova meets Adrian, who is a renegade, while she's trying to dismantle them, and she kind of struggles between like, maybe this one isn't so bad, being like, okay, but I hate them. It's interesting how like it kind of toes the line between good and evil. There isn't like a clear cut, oh, this side is good and this side is evil. Like, they kind of both have their issues, which I like. It made it definitely more interesting to read. The characters were fun. I really liked the dynamics between Nova and Adrian and like the other in their group. That was really fun. It just really didn't stick with me. Like, I had fun while I was reading it. I don't know if it needed to be this long. Some parts definitely dragged for me, but it was also just such a quick read. Quick and easy. I don't read a lot of sci-fi. Maybe it's just not a genre that I've explored enough to like know my opinions on it. Maybe that's why I'm having trouble kind of putting it into words, because I don't read a lot of sci-fi, so I don't have a lot to compare it to. I would definitely recommend it though, because I think it was really consumable. I think if you're a fan of like Marvel, you might like this. This might be your vibe. Right after it was done, I rated it a 4-star, but the more I thought about it, I lowered it to a 3 stars. So I think that's where I'm at with it now. I am happy I read it though, and I'm gonna continue on with the series. I just don't think it's what I'm in the mood for right now, so I think it'll be a while before I jump back in. And then the last like novel I read in March was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller, and I am so happy I read this. I loved it. Loved. I rated it 5 stars, and I just read it. I just uploaded my thoughts on it in my vacation vlog. This is not something I normally read. Like, I don't read a lot of literary fiction, I would say. I think it was, I rated this 5 stars right off the bat. Like, just loved, I love Madeline Miller. I've read Circe, which is like, I know is not the order people usually do it, but it really doesn't matter. This is her first book, and it's definitely her more popular one, but I liked it just as much as I liked Circe. I love them both. It's basically the Greek mythology retelling of Achilles and Patroclus, and I didn't really know that much about it. I only knew like vaguely how it ended. I wasn't really sure how like they got there. Even though it was kind of spoiled, I don't think it took away really from the story. It's also Greek mythology. Like, I don't think there are spoilers for Greek mythology. It wasn't even about the story though for me. It was just the lyricism of the writing for me. Her writing is truly magnificent. The way she tells stories like feels so magical and lyrical, and I really like that. Like, I really felt like she translated a myth into a story really well, and I just really love the writing in this book. Her writing just does it for me. All in all, I really loved this book. I'm really happy I read it because it has been on my TBR for like 4 or 5 years, and I'm just now getting into it. And isn't that crazy how like a book can be on your TBR for like 5 years and it's just a 5-star just sitting there for you? And it like literally makes me contemplate my entire life, because it makes me look at my TBR and be like, what else have I been neglecting? But all in all, I really enjoyed this. And then the last book I read, I do not have a physical copy. It is The Emperor's Soul, and it is the last kind of book in the Elantris world. I wanted to read it before I started the Stormlight Archives, which I'm going to do this month. I'm very scared about it. The Emperor's Soul, I really enjoyed. It kind of snuck up on me how much I enjoyed it. I rated it 4 stars. It's a short story. It's about, I think, 125 pages-ish. I literally, like, most of it I read on audio. Yeah, I just think it's part of the Cosmere. I feel like it just added a little bit to my understanding of the Cosmere. It's about this girl, Shay, who is a forger, which is someone who can change the essence of something. She can change the history of an object. I'm so sorry if I'm explaining this so badly. She can change the history of an object, therefore changing the object. And she could forge it. Like, this kind of magic is very, like, frowned upon in this universe. So she's a prisoner, and then one day the emperor dies. The council members are like, maybe we could use her because she can forge souls. She's still a prisoner, but they're using her to reforge the emperor's soul so they don't lose their spot on the council. And I thought it was interesting. Like, I love the way Brandon Sanderson writes, like, magic systems. I think it's really cool, like, how he comes up with so many different magic systems, I guess. What I really like too is how he can make a 125-page, like, novella into, like, I felt like it was really complex, like, and it was done well too. Like, I didn't feel like he was just, like, ramming a lot of information into, like, a few pages and you're like, wait, what? Like, no, it was very fleshed out, it was very well thought out, it was very well articulated, and it felt like a novel. And you know what I liked is, like, this easily could have been like a full, like, 600-page novel, and I can appreciate when an author's like doesn't just do it to do it, you know, like make a full book just to have a full book. Like, if it can be done in 150-ish pages, then, like, more power to you, you know? And I don't think it needed to be longer than that. I think it was the perfect length. I thought it was really well thought out for a book of that length. So I really did enjoy it. And now I'm excited to start the Stormlight Archives, which I'm very scared about. So those were all the books that I read in March. And if you read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts were on them. I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. I love filming these wrap-ups because I love, like, just looking at all the books that I read and just kind of talking about them. Also, if you guys know any, like, historical fantasy kind of whimsical recs very similar to Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies, please let me know, because that's, like, all I've been looking for recently. Like, that's all I've wanted to read. Books with any, like, spooky vibes or, like, whimsical vibes. That's all that are also have elements of fantasy. This is, like, very weirdly specific, but if you do have any recommendations for me for those, please let me know. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I always very much appreciate it. If you like my videos, please subscribe, and so you can see them every time I post. And I hope you guys have a fabulous week, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!